In real life, we tend to hate bad guys. That's why we call them bad guys. But in the movies, they're great. Like in the movies, bad guys usually make the movie, especially in science fiction movies. And my name is Christian Maltec. I have seen 1084 science fiction movies so far. So here are my 7 favorite bad guys in the movies. The 7 best bad guys in the movies. Number 7 is Ming the Merciless, the Emperor Ming, Emperor of the Galaxy in the Flash Gordon franchise, if you like. So Flash Gordon comes from the comic books, and the comic books, Flash goes to the planet Mungo, which is ruled by the evil Emperor Ming, and who is the emperor of the planet Mungo, but also of the galaxy. And in the serials, the first serial, the emperor is played by Charles Middleton, and he really imbues the character with all the qualities of the really the quintessential bad guy, because he's hyper imbued with his own sense of superiority, like his natural his essence, his ontological essence is to rule the world. That's what he does. He's the natural emperor, and obviously everybody needs to follow his whims and his desires and his goals and his orders, because that's just the natural order of things. But there's a certain kind of joyfulness, if you like, in Charles Middleton's interpretation. He's very forceful, he's very sure of himself, he's very devious. Obviously he's always hatching incredible plans, but what makes him such a good villain is his sense of authority and being so sure, like so completely certain of himself. This is a guy with no self-doubt. I'm the ruler, and that's all there is to it. And I will add kind of a cheat, but I'll add also Max von Sydow's take on the character, which is so awesome. Like in the 1980 movie, Max von Sydow's take on Ming the Merciless is a brilliant, it's at once a send-off of the Middleton character. He plays it in one way exactly like Middleton plays it. He has all the same qualities. So it's an homage to Middleton. If you've seen both of them, you can put them side by side and appreciate just how fantastic a job von Sydow is doing. Because also he's kind of making fun of it. That's the thing. He's kind of having, he's certainly having fun with it, but also while respecting the character and Middleton's take. So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but hyper grounded and serious at the same time. So both von Sydow's takes and Middleton's take are legendary interpretations of the character, and well deserving our being our number 7 entry, but our first entry in our list of best bad guys in the movies, science fiction of all time. Number 6 is Zod. So General Zod. So, and here I'm only using the version. I'm referring to the Terrence Stamp version from Superman 1 and Superman 2. So again, kind of cheating if you like, because it doesn't matter. Okay, but the thing is that General Zod, he's like Ming the Merciless. He's kind of like Ming, but he's never actually had power. His whole shtick is that, of course, I need to rule the world and the universe. But he does, but he's even more imbued of himself than Ming. Like, he would see Ming as just this worthless bootlicker. He's beneath contempt compared to Zod's own, innate superiority. But Zod, he's a general, so maybe he's led some people before, but essentially he's never ruled anything. It's all in his mind. He's kind of like the master in Doctor Who. Certainly the first version. I forget the name of the brilliant actor who played it in the John Pertwee. If it comes back, I'll mention it later. But the master, his whole thing is ruling the universe, and he tries it like a million times, but he's never done it. It's just obviously my goal in life and my natural place in the order of things is to rule the universe. But what has he ever done? He couldn't manage, a second cup or something. It's boiled down to that famous scene where, he says, kneel before Zod. And that's the thing. He is the quintessential expression of being convinced, like really convinced that it is your nature in life to rule everyone, and everyone must just kneel, because that's the order of things. Like, apples grow on apple trees and you rule the universe. That's the way it is. So I love Zod. I love Zod. And once again, Terence Stamp, he's a formidable actor. He's played, in countless author films, and the Limey, the Soderbergh movie, was very good in that. He's kind of a generational talent in many ways. But and see, he has fun with the character, but again, he plays it very sincerely at the same time. So highest caliber actor, taking a kind of a pantomime villain almost, but he makes it work. He makes him into this guy meant to rule the universe. And so he's on number 6. Number 5 is Dr. Mabuse. Okay, so here Dr. Mabuse is based on a character in a novel. And if you get a chance to read the novel, it's very interesting, because in the novel he's not exactly a bad guy. And even here, it's questionable. He's evil incarnate. Like, he does, but it's not sure how much. He's kind of like beyond good and evil, really. So the Norbert Jacques novel was very popular, and it was turned into a movie, very famous movie by Fritz Lang, which is Dr. Mabuse, the Gambler, a 2-part movie, a silent movie. And he did a sequel, which was Testament of Dr. Mabuse, which was kind of a critique of the Nazis. And I rewatched it recently, and many times people will say that this movie is a subversive criticism of, the regime you're living under, like fascism or communism. Very often in the West we say that, and quite often, most often, it's not really true. We're kind of projecting rebellion where there isn't any, or it's very disputable if there is any actual rebellion. But actually, in the case of Testament of Dr. Mabuse, it's clearly a criticism of Hitler. There is no way. The guy who plays Dr. Mabuse in this one, his mannerism, his speech, it's Hitler. Okay, certainly in one scene, it's a criticism of the Nazis. But I put Mabuse in quotes, because he dies essentially in the second movie, and turns insane at the end of the first movie, The Gambler, and then he's put into a psychiatric hospital, and he kind of possesses the boss, like the main doctor of the guy who runs the psychiatric hospital. And it's not really sure, is he going insane, or has the spirit of Mabuse actually possessed him? And the thing is that there's a third sequel in the 1960s, and then there's like maybe 10 sequels of various qualities and sometimes dubious canonicity. Like the last one is a Jess Franco movie. It's a topic for another day. That one doesn't count. I didn't mention this. Okay, so what I failed to mention here. He's this evil genius who wants to rule the world through chaos. That's the thing. and he's kind of a crime lord, but he's the burn everything down crime lord. Okay, he's kind of like the Joker in Dark Knight, except for one thing. So Joker in Dark Knight is about well, he's about kind of making money, but he burns down all the money. He's about chaos for chaos's sake. Okay. This is very close to what Dr. Mabuse is, except that he creates chaos for chaos's sake. That's his modus operandi. But he's at the center of that chaos. So the idea here is that he will spread chaos throughout the world, okay, and make the entire world collapse into utter chaos and anarchy. But he will be at the center of it, like the spider in the web, and he will rule everyone through the chaos. He's the eye of the hurricane. He's at the center of it, and only he knows what's really going on, and that's how he rules, right? So it's chaos for chaos's sake, but at the same time, there's an iron will, and there's a kind of vision there. All these things is what really makes the character of Mabuse so really fascinating. And again, in the book, he's kind of he's doing all that to finance an utopia. He wants to buy an island and create a perfect society. So he's not even doing it for power. He's doing it out of some form of utopian dream, right? So it's very strange, and there are echoes of that in the first movie. But the thing here is that by the time we get to the 60s, not only is it all about chaos, and this chaos as almost a philosophical way of interacting with the world, but like the guy who I don't want to spoil it, so I'm kind of walking a fine line here, but the person who is Mabuse then by that time, and certainly in the later sequels, it's people being possessed by the spirit of Mabuse. So like by the fifth or sixth sequel, there's a new guy who is again the boss of because they made a remake of Testament, so he's the boss of the Institute, so, and not as good an actor, I will say. But by that time, Mabuse is a principle. It is the principle of will and the principle of evil and chaos. But again, it is completely beyond good and evil. Okay, it's just chaos for chaos's sake, but the order at the core of like almost a principled order at the center of the chaos. But obviously it's completely destructive and evil and self-serving. But again, there is no real self there. That's the thing. Again, there's a guy named Mabuse, but his whole point is to do that. So he's a person with kind of a personality, but there is no real self there at the same time. So it's all these things. So philosophically, it's absolutely brilliant. It's incredibly deep. And if you watch the whole series, certainly up until like the first couple of sequels are okay. After Fitzlang leaves, Thousand Eyes is his last one, and then he does Steel Net of Dr. Mabuse. And then he does somebody does Steel Net, and somebody does a remake of Testament, and these are okay. And afterwards, it really goes downhill. But certainly, the first few sequels, there's something there. There is something thematic which you only find. I only saw that in the Mabuse series. It's really fascinating. And again, it's kind of the same take as Heath Ledger in Dark Knight, but even deeper philosophically. Another take on kind of the same idea, but an even more troubling one. So he is our number 5. Number 4 is Dr. Cyclops from the 1937 movie, something like that. It's an early color movie, and it's an early shrinking people down to small size movie. I think it's the first one I think I'm aware of, certainly, where an evil scientist, shrinks people, kind of like Incredible Shrinking Man. Here it's not an evil scientist that shrinks the guy; it's a nuclear event and all these things. And Incredible Shrinking Man, it's a masterpiece. If you haven't seen it, it's so good. But after Shrinking Man, because that worked, there were all the Burt I. Gordon movies. He was really into making people bigger and smaller. So Attack of the Puppet People I saw recently, and the hippies, the one with one of the Bridges brothers, whatever. There's a lot of people shrinking movies, but this is essentially the first one. And here, the bad guy is called Dr. Cyclops, and he's called that because he's basically blind. He has these huge glasses. Okay, so the idea here is that he has found a shrinking ray, and he thinks he can become insanely rich through that, and he has like a uranium mine or something like that. There's a mine involved, and he will use the shrinking ray to be powerful, and at the same time he's exploiting this mine, and his plan involves using both of these together, but ultimately he will become, master of the world. And there are two things, or three things really, which makes Dr. Cyclops, make Dr. Cyclops such a good villain. So, first of all, he's played by Albert Decker. And he's amazingly good in the role. He brings a joy to the role, which is very unique. That's the main reason I put him in this list, because he's doing evil things out of sheer joy, out of the sheer joy of doing it and getting away with it. So it's like, okay, if he has a choice between, killing somebody or doing something else, kind of like Frankenstein and the one without Peter Cushing, the Hammer Frankenstein without Peter Cushing. If he has a choice between like murder or something else, or shrinking people in this case, he'll usually take the option which is the easiest, but also like the funniest to him. And what you sense in this character is that he will betray anyone for any reason. So he's a complete sociopath, right? But he's so gleeful. That's the thing, that's the quality, and Albert Decker really brings forth that quality in it. He's also a massive guy, so that's the other thing. He's huge. I think that was the reason he was cast one of the reasons he was cast in the role. He's extremely commanding as a presence on screen, so you feel that power. Okay, so there's the joy and the charisma. He's very, charismatic, but he's very powerful physically. But at the same time, this is the third, almost comic book aspect of the character. He's, as I said, almost blind, basically blind. He has these very thick glasses, and when he shrinks down the people, eventually they break his glasses, obviously, so he can only see with one eye, hence Dr. Cyclops. But the thing is that all these qualities combined, with the power, the immense physical power, but the immense physical vulnerability because of the eyes, and so which is a very comic book quality. And the fact that Albert Decker is such a good actor, we also see him, by the way, in Kiss Me Deadly, the Mike Hammer movie, which is a masterpiece as well. Fantastic science fiction film noir movie. If you haven't seen it, do so. But and he plays, again, one of the bad guys in that. But here, he's the quintessential as bad guy. Okay, he's in it because he's in it for the lulz as much as for the power, and that really shines through in his performance. So that's why he's our number 4. Number 3 is Baron Harkonnen, and again, I'm kind of cheating here because it's partly the Harkonnen of the movies, but the reason the character works so well for me in the movies is because I've read the books. And I can kind of project in the, if you've read the books, well, it really complements the aura of the character in the movies. Okay, because what makes Baron Harkonnen so good? Well, it's kind of like Dr. Cyclops. He has kind of that joyful quality, but he's smart. That's the thing, and that's the thing that Villeneuve pulls off with the actor who plays him. He is a devious mastermind of dirty tricks. If you've played the if you play the board game, like the old Avalon Hills board game, which is great and which they re-edited recently, one of the best games of all time. And every faction has a power, and the Harkonnen power is they have 4 times as many devious tricks as the others. There's like devious tricks cards, like a deck of devious tricks, something like that, and they have like a gazillion more than the others. It's their main power, and that's what you see in the movie. Like, he's always like wheels within wheels, the famous sentence in the books. He's making plans inside of plans and traps inside of traps, and it's all about betrayals and, you know, really the dirtiest of dirty tricks, like how to break Dr. Yue, for instance, who with the Imperial conditioning. So obviously Peter de Vries, the Mentat, he came up with the actual plan, but it's still kind of like the ultimately, yeah, it's the Harkonnen ethos, which is driven by Baron Harkonnen himself. There's reason to think that his ancestors weren't all like that. It's really him. He's really the incarnation of deviousness, and it's political deviousness, and that's the main point. So yeah, he's a completely sexual monster, he's horrible. You know, he kills people for sexual gratification, and obviously he's physically gruesome, like morbidly obese and all these things, and this makes him visually striking, and that helps in making him such a striking villain. But ultimately, why is he so good is because he's super smart. You know, and he sends Raban, the Raban to Dune. I'll finish for Baron Harkonnen with that example. Once they get back on the planet, they betray the Atreides and they get back on the planet. The brilliant part of the Baron's plan is that he wants the people to love his family, essentially. He wants to stay in place through love, and he's a monster. So he will put the biggest monster he has, who is Raban, and crush them, you know, and he's telling Raban to exploit the people to the max, you know, and through cruelty. And Raban is very happy because he's stupid. But what the Baron doesn't say to Raban is that he's condemning Raban. He knows what he's doing, because he knows the people will hate him. So he's planning to sacrifice Raban and put Fade instead as the messianic, you know, kind of like Paul, you know, his version of Paul, okay, and the beautiful boy who will be loved by the people and who will appear as a savior who will free them from Raban. So that's his plan. So psychologically, it's brilliant. It's a really, really good plan. It fails because, if you've seen the movie, because he's not aware, like, you've seen the movie, but in itself, it's a really well thought out plan by a master politician, full of deviousness and betrayal, and, you know, plans within plans, wheels within wheels, and that's what makes the Baron so good. He's super smart. He has no scruples at all. It's all about power, and yes, he does get off on it, but it's ultimately he's the quintessential ruthless politician, like the Game of Thrones on a galactic level. Okay. House of Cards, Game of Thrones. So number 2 is okay. Again, I'm kind of cheating for this one because I'm putting 2. So number 2 is Lord Humongous from the Mad Max movies, but I'm going to do something horrible here. I'm going to put on top of Lord Humongous Dementus from the... You're going to hate me for this one. Dementus from that the latest one, like the Furiosa movie, which I saw this summer. And why am I doing that? Okay, because I did not. I liked the movie. I loved the movie Furiosa. I loved it, but I didn't like Dementus at all. I hated him. Okay, and not in a cool I hate the bad guys in a wrestling way. I just didn't like him. I kind of like I hated Ted DiBiase as a kid. But though I didn't, okay, Ted DiBiase is one of the all-time best villains. Topic for another day. Okay, my initial plan was to put Lord Humongous, the big beefcake guy with the hockey mask, and to put him at number 2 because he's always, like the Baron Harkonnen, he's always my favorite, one of my favorite bad guys in the movies. Visually, he's so striking, and I love him as a villain because he... I rewatched the movie recently, Mad Max 2, and he's a warlord, but he's smart and he's kind of principled. He clearly loves his insane, maniacal troops. Okay, and he... he makes this speech, and we've all suffered, we've all lost someone, when they're besieging the pumping station. The first time Max sees them. Okay, so what makes Lord Humongous interesting is that there's clearly a backstory there, and in the Mad Max movies, everybody is like that. So that's one of many big strengths of the Mad Max series. Is that there's an incredible level of depth in all the characters, especially the bad guys. But I like Lord Humongous because not only does he look like a comic book supervillain, but he's clearly a lot more than that, and there's a lot of love for his troops. He's a good leader. He's a warlord, he's ruthless, but he's a good leader. So why am I putting Dementus instead? Why not, Toe Cutter from the first one? Or why not, the Tina Turner, Immortan Joe? Yeah, great villain. Okay. But why Dementus? Because he's the best. He is the best villain George Miller has ever come up with. He's everything we want to believe the bad guys are, but Dementus shows us how much it's all a sham. That's the thing. So Dementus is an illusion. Dementus is selling us whatever we want to buy, and he's a hollow shell of a man. Okay, and he is driven by revenge. Okay, he is driven by something, but he's also dead inside. All these things are like the core of what actual villainy is, and dare I say, in real life. Okay. So why am I saying he's trying to sell you something? And this has been observed by other people. So we see him the first time, when we first see Dementus in the movie, he's a messiah. He's a messianic figure. He's kind of dressed, he seems to be dressed kind of like, a rabbi in Jesus of Nazareth or something like that. Like in the, he looks like a prophet, and people treat him like a prophet, this awe-inspiring figure. And the first thing we see of him, interestingly, is he's actually wearing the wedding dress of his, presumably his wife, and there's a doll attached, so presumably his daughter. So we can kind of guess what happened. It's never said. We never learned what happened to this guy, but clearly, wedding dress, a doll, and now he's become this evil warlord. Okay, and he's always carrying that thing. Okay, so he's trying. There's some revenge there. There's some pain there. Okay, but we see him. He's a prophet, but that only lasts for a while, and then he becomes this. And he's making these speeches, and everybody loves him. And he has the old guy telling the history. He has this court around him, and okay. People follow him. He has his followers, his loyal followers, and everybody believes in him. And I think his next iteration is the warlord. Yes, like, so now he's the criminal, the general. He is driving around in his Roman, like cart. I don't know what you call it. Like with instead of four horses, it's four motorcycles, and he's driving around like in Ben Hur. And now he's become this Caesar character. And he goes to Immortan Joe's place. It's a prequel, so Immortan Joe is still around. And he sees kind of like an opportunity to make money or for power. So he goes and he makes this big speech to Immortan Joe. You will kneel like Zod. You will kneel before me. But he hasn't thought anything through. So that's the first hint here, which is that he has no plans, he has no clue, and he's stupid. Okay, he sounds smart and he makes good speeches, but he's completely stupid because Immortan Joe, with his fortress, he's actually powerful for real. He has an actual army, and that guy knows that Dementus is a fraud. Okay, and Dementus goes in there and he thinks that Immortan Joe is just going to kneel before him, and obviously he gets kind of clubbered, and because it was a terrible idea, and now he's made a mortal enemy of this super powerful guy. So what does he do? Well, he comes up with this plan, and so he becomes he takes control of one of the three cities that rules the economy of the wastelands, which is, I think it's the Bullet Town. So where the ammo is manufactured. So he takes control of it. And then he becomes then a political and economic ruler at that time, and that gives him the power to ascend to the level of Immortan Joe, and he makes a deal with Immortan Joe, and now he's one of the rulers of the wasteland. But the thing is that Dementus is still a fraud, because next time we see him, he's destroyed his city. And the people are revolting against him. And it's all falling apart. And the only way for him to maintain his life, really, and it's kind of a sense of, the illusion that he's anything except a fraud and a self-serving fraud. Well, the only way really is to divert the attention of his followers who have nothing to eat or are really pissed off, against Immortan Joe, and try to beat Immortan Joe and basically blow it all up, So, so that's the final part of the movie. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to see it. I know many people didn't like it, but I loved it. I think it's great. And I kind of think that people said the movie isn't good because sometimes when a movie starts tanking, very often we'll see everybody kind of stacking up on the movie and saying it's bad, because it's the popular thing to do, to say that something is bad when everybody says it's bad. But I disagree. I thought it was a couple of small criticisms I could address with the movie, and I didn't like it as much as Fury Road because it's a complete masterpiece, So. Yeah, it's not as good, but not that many movies are as good as Fury Road. So yeah, Fury Road is not as good, but it's still infinitely better than 97% of the movies of the last 10 years. So. And one of the big reasons is precisely that thing with Dementus. And ultimately we learn, because he says it, Dementus, that he's driven by revenge, but he's completely dead inside, and he's doing all that basically because he's after fleeting sensations. He's not feeling anything anymore. He's really, really cut off from humanity, and it really is all a sham, all a play, and he's really just manipulating people through beautiful speeches, through rhetoric and symbolism. And that's why he's such a good villain, because he's showing us how villainy usually works in the real world. That's how people get manipulated. That's how people get, conned into following whatever social movement you think is bad. That's how it's operated, So that's really a profound observation of what evil, if you like, or villainy, or what it actually is. So Lord Humongous is what it looks like from the outside. It's charming, it's powerful, it's frightening, all these things. But ooh, power, this evil warlord, and Immortan Joe, same thing. But Dementus is what it actually is, which is manipulation and shallowness and emptiness and anything but attractive. So that's why he's number 2. Honorable mentions, there are tons, obviously. I mean, too many to mention. Dr. Octopus from the second movie in particular. I love him. He's great. He has, oftentimes, usually villains, you need a form of ambiguity. All of them have kind of that. So Dr. Octopus, he's friendly to Peter Parker, but then he becomes insane. He's very smart, but all these things. And he has, obviously, the physical thing with the mechanical arms, which are super cool. So he's a great one. I love it. Like in the comic books, he's really super cool. He marries Aunt May eventually, like in the comics, like in the 60s. So he's kind of like Peter Parker's stepfather. So the Joker, obviously, the Terminator, or Skynet. You could say he's a bad guy. HAL 9000, the computer. So many great villains in the movies. But my number one, well, you might have guessed, because it's hard to pick anyone else, but maybe you're expecting, okay, so it's in Star Wars, okay, or number one villain is from Star Wars, and you might think, ooh, the Emperor, or ooh, Darth Vader, but no. And again, maybe is this cheating? But no. Okay, our main villain is the Empire itself. Okay, and what's brilliant about the first trilogy, if you like, the Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi, is that if you take all of them together, you can see the Empire itself as the main villain being expressed through the 3 main expressions of political evil, which you have, by the way, with Lord Humongous and in Mad Max 2, in Road Warrior. There's an element of that, because there are actually 3 villains: Humongous, Toady, who is the speaker, who makes most of the speeches, and the punk guy, I forget his name, but the Brawn. Okay, so, and it was deliberate. Okay, the idea in Mad Max 2 was to show 3 aspects of power, speech, strength, and Humongous' leadership, I guess. But here, okay, so the Empire in the original trilogy, it's really very potently expressed, okay, because in the first one, what do you have? Who is the main villain? Well, yeah, Darth Vader is there, and he's choking people, and he's very impressive. Okay, but he's still just a henchman, really, in the first one. The main villain, and the Empire, we hear about it, and the Emperor, he's dissolved the Senate, yes? So he exists, but we never see him. Okay. The main bad guy is Tarkin, okay, played by Peter Cushing, my favorite actor. And the legendary Peter Cushing. But and what is he? He's the civil servant. He's the administrator. Okay, he's the career politician, if you like. He was given that job because he was good at managing things, and we presume, I think it's kind of mentioned in like the extended universe, and he was kind of good at sucking up. He's in charge because he's a good guy in an office who can manage things, and it's his job. So dare I say, he's almost kind of like, not to be polemical, but he's almost kind of like an Eichmann figure, Adolf Eichmann. So that's not to go into too much detail, because it can be polemical, which is not the goal here, but Eichmann is often presented, he's the architect of the final solution, and he's often presented as like evil incarnate. He hated, he did it through hate. But if you actually look at what he was trying, like, what? How did he see this? This is the famous Hannah Arendt book, Eichmann in Jerusalem. Well, he's also kind of a shell of a man. He's also he's smart because he's read Kant, but he interprets it in a really superficial and stupid way. And ultimately, he has a job, and all he's trying to do is fit in at his job and follow orders because he gets off on following orders. And it's that kind of character. Ultimately, he's the civil servant who wants to do a good job. But in the case of Tarkin, it's so it's not exactly the same, but he's definitely the administration of evil, of a functioning evil institution. Like Dr. Mabuse has henchmen. He has an infrastructure. He's building chaos, but he has, a network, and definitely the emperor, Ming the Merciless, well, he has a state. He runs a state. He has people working under him. So Tarkin is these people. If General Zod had that, people would kneel before him, right? That's what's missing. He's trying to control the universe with two people, the girl and the big brawny guy. That's not enough. You need a political infrastructure, and you need civil servants and people, to, like, politicians, but like on a administrative level. So Tarkin is the administrator, evil as administration, okay? And every evil every form of social control, even if they say they're not doing it, they need that, okay? But the second one, well, we mentioned Darth Vader in Empire, okay? So, which makes the Empire the best villain, okay? So what is the second expression? Well, he's the true believer. Okay, so Tarkin doesn't necessarily believe in the Emperor or not believe in it. He's doing a job, he's getting power through it, okay, and nice cushy job. Maybe a good pension, strokes his ego, all these things, okay. And we've seen that. It's very easy to find examples of that. But Darth Vader is scary because he truly believes in the cause. He believes in the dark side, even if he feels trapped by it. But if you only knew the power of the dark side, well, he's talking about something there, a personal experience. And when he's talking to the Emperor, what is thy bidding, my master? Thy bidding. So yeah, the highest form of expression. Like the Emperor is his father figure, really. Like, he has a form of love and respect for the Emperor. The Emperor is not only his political master, but his spiritual master, you see. So, and again, if you look at examples throughout history, if you like, well, okay, I'll use the Nazis again. So, but okay, so in the Nazis, you had people like Goering, the fat guy who was in charge of the Luftwaffe. Well, he didn't believe in any of that stuff. He was just out. He was a morphine addict, adventurer, and he was in it for the money and the pleasure and all these things. He's a veteran from the First World War, and he was in it for the depravity. So that was Goering. Okay, but the others, Goebbels and all the others, like Himmler or Rudolf Hess, name them. Okay, all these people who are usually not very smart, not very talented, all these people, they truly believed in the cause. Okay, they loved their leader and they believed in him, and it was obviously stupid and misguided, but they truly believed in it. Okay, so that's what Darth Vader represents. Okay, and that's also what makes him. That's part of what makes him so scary, because he should know better, but no. Okay, so that's the second expression of evil. But okay, so the third one obviously is the Emperor. So, and what is the Emperor? Well, again, the Emperor, kind of like Dementus in a way, and kind of Dr. Cyclops in a way. Well, he's like Dr. Cyclops, he's in it for himself, and he gives zero Fs about anyone and anything, and he does it out of the sheer joy of being evil, which is not something you find really in real life. It's very rare. Like people who do evil things, usually they have a hard time, no matter what they say. They wake up screaming at night. Okay. And there is no question that Palpatine sleeps perfectly well, perfectly fine. He has no problem sleeping. But yeah, so Palpatine is like the selfishness of the ruling person. Okay, and again, kind of like Dementus in Furiosa, he's the emptiness of the speech, because he'll say anything. He's been treating Darth Vader like his pupil, but like all the Sith, basically, he doesn't care about him at all. Vader loves the Emperor, but the Emperor, he's just another pawn, just another pawn, just another pawn. And from what I've heard, for instance, of crime lords, like people on the top, that's kind of like from what I've heard, that's kind of like how they are. They're very, very, very smart, but very, very, very selfish, and everyone is a pawn to be manipulated. And that's really what the Emperor is, and that does exist in real life, not only in crime, but in politics, obviously. And I've heard people say. Somebody said that to me once, which I found was very insightful, which is there are three types of politicians, really. And Palpatine is the scariest version. There are three types of politicians. There are those that know that the game is rigged. Those that believe that the game isn't rigged or isn't a con. Okay. And these people aren't taken seriously by other politicians who know that it isn't. Okay, those people are fools, essentially. Okay. And I'm not saying that's what I believe, but that's a point of view that does exist and is shared by many people in power. So, people who believe the system isn't rigged are fools, or people who know the system is rigged, but they want the money or the sex or whatever. So that's like Goering. Okay, so he's not a fool, but he's in it for the advantages he can get out of it. Okay, so that's the second category, and the third category, which is Palpatine. Okay, and I could name actual politicians. I won't, but there are obviously actual politicians like that, who know the game is rigged, but who like the game, like Game of Thrones. They know it's a sham, they know it's a con, they know it's all about selfishness and power, but they like that. They get off on it, yeah. So, and those are the scary ones, like Palpatine. But again, Palpatine is just a part of the main number one villain itself, which is the Empire. Because that guy, the spider in the web, the head honcho, the evil politician who knows it's a game but gets off on it, he's still just a part of the system. He still has true believers like Darth Vader, and he still has this whole crew of enablers and functionaries, or people who have a job to do, and they get paid to do the job, and they might believe in the cause, they might not believe in the cause, but I'm just driving the train to that concentration camp, so I'm just building the train, driving the train, nothing to see, cashing my paycheck. The infrastructure and people in the infrastructure, and it's all that, and the Empire is all that. And really, if you take it like that, it's really extremely well observed. There is something really smart, even maybe it's accidental, but it's there in the first trilogy, and that's really what makes it so such, yeah, it makes it the number one villain. And also, obviously, you know, the costumes are great, the music is great, the spaceships are great, so that helps. But yeah, it's the idea here is not to draw conclusions and apply them directly to real life, because there are nuances and all these things. But all these types of villains do give us insights into, like, windows into how what we might call villainy expresses itself, even in our own psyche. You know, we have to be careful of not falling into these traps ultimately, and they are traps. And people who do these things, like Dementus, ultimately that's the big lesson. It is a trap. It is a trap. We can do better. So. Yeah, don't know what the next list is going to be, but I have like 50 on my document here, so another one is coming soon. If you want to support the channel, there's a link in the description. And until next time, take care of yourselves and keep watching the sky.